All right, we're Team Winnovation. I'm C2C Gabe Silva.
C2C Leland Cathy.
C2C Elson Williams.
C2C Eric has and Mario somewhere.
Mario is not with us tonight. He's busy. He's got some stuff to do, but he's here in spirit. So we're just talking about our Arctic presentation.
I want to just kind of go ahead and recap from the beginning, I guess. It's a quick run through what we'll talk about. We'll introduce ourselves to the team, like our experience regarding the problem. I think one thing we kind of realized was that none of us are very technically inclined towards Arctic communications, but
Nope.
so that was a primary problem. We'll talk about some of our problems in our process through that, the difficulties in selecting a solution, various things, and then where we came to a bit of a revelation, where we sit with the solution now. So we'll kind of go ahead and get that started. So as I said already, these three, or I guess the rest of the 4 team members are MSS majors, so they are much more well versed in the strategic strategies avenue, and can talk more fluently towards that. But I was a management major when we started. But again, none of that leads to technical expertise in the Arctic. But I think that kind of led to our first major problem in that everything that we saw and all the information that we got, I think right off the bat from Dr. Washburn, like he walks in with a stack of papers and it's like, hey, this is the problem here, and all of it was math.
And then proceeded to talk through all of it for 4 hours. Just open the fire nose.
4 hours.
Yeah, literally 4 hours. Just straight information that just went right over our heads. Because it was all technical that we didn't know the terms. And it was just great information, very helpful, but it took us a while to process through it, to figure out what it meant, applications of it, where we could apply it in the future, and how we could basically integrate it into our presentations.
Right. So in addition to that one physical packet, I think he sent us like close to 250 megabytes worth of information that was on class.
Yep.
That we had to kind of sort through as we went through. And I think when Dr. Washburn first presented it to us, we were like, whoa, and then we looked at it, and the more we kind of developed our solution to the problem and started working through things, we realized what he handed us was extremely valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we just finished using some of the last bit of information in our last PBL, some of that, the Arctic Canada projects, and what they're doing, even when it comes to just the breakdown of, who our partners are. That came from a lot of the information that he handed us.
I think one of the reasons, or one of the results of getting all that information was it kind of diverted us from looking deeper into the problem just because we were so overwhelmed. So we got a decent surface knowledge of what was going on, and that led to our first, I guess, minimum viable product, which was a 3-pronged approach. And that took the sides of technology and strategy, and as we found out later on, that was not going to work. There was a lot of detail we were missing. There was a lot of information that we kind of skimmed over, and this 3-pronged approach, while it sounded good, that's not something that we could have actually made a product for a few different reasons. And one of those reasons was that most of the interviews we went in and conducted, specifically one of them that was a secret interview, basically got told.
There were 5 of them, really.
Yeah, almost every interview that we did with our sponsor and at Peterson or NORAD consisted of us saying we're thinking of trying this, and them saying we've tried that, and we tried it like 10 years ago. And so that was just really disheartening, because it just kind of kept telling us, well, you guys are starting at ground zero, we're not making any progress. And I don't know, for me that was really frustrating.
I think when we got to the pivot or proceed part of the PBL, I think we all kind of thought, like, okay, where are we pivoting or proceeding from?
That was a huge point right there.
Because I think if we want to compare ourselves to the rest of the groups in the class, I think we were one of the last ones, if not the last one, to come up with a true solution that would actually work at least through whatever we were trying took us a little bit too long to decide, hey, technology is not the answer, not for us anyway, not as 5 cadets
Yeah.
with zero technical background.
But granted though, I feel like kind of the reasons like why we like decided on that pivot at that last minute was just like all of like our information, all of our interviews were kind of pushing us towards like, yes, technology is gonna be the answer. And so for us, like trying to like do our best to like make sense of it, make sense of the technological solutions that were being proposed, just to find out that those solutions actually didn't work. That was then kind of what crushed us, and then we didn't really have much other information to really go off of. As our well, we know we have to pivot, but none of our interviews have really been focused on that. So where do we pivot to?
Right.
And I think part of that was, we came into this project with, basically, like, we wanna fix this, like, we have this issue, let's solve this completely. So we kinda hooked onto, the 3-pronged approach and then all these other technical aspects until we hit the pivot or proceed, and we realized we can't, we don't have the time, we don't have the funding, we don't have the expertise, and then we didn't have anything to go off of, because our like I said, our interviews were all technical. So we were kind of latched onto something that we had invested a lot of time and interviews into, and had nowhere to go from there. Because we had tailored our interviews towards technical people versus different branches, different career fields, and different people that, contractors, whatever, that could help us be not technical.
Yeah, and I think probably the best part is that, like, we probably wouldn't have gotten much benefit doing it any other way, despite like the kind of difficulty and frustration that came from that.
Yeah.
I think one common theme we realized, especially when talking to some of the technical people and people who were working with Mill SATCOM or commercial SATCOM, was that when they, specifically the military, asked for a capability to do X, Y, and Z, once it actually gets up to say, look, we get the space prong of things rather than the atmospheric or the ground-based approach. By the time we get a satellite up into space and moving in such a dynamic environment, it's like driving a new car off the lot, so where it starts depreciating immediately. And I think one anomaly that they pointed out was like the Mill SATCOM school bus-sized, satellites that were only projected to work for a couple of years, but have been working for the past 20 plus. But that's a very rare occurrence in this career field, or just in our scope of the search. Whereas other things, they throw them up there, and 6 months later they're obsolete. They did their job and they did okay, to say anything, but didn't get there. So as we talked to these technical people, we realized there's a bit of an acquisitions problem, and what gets slowed down is trying to acquire new capabilities through the standard or even the rapid federal acquisitions process. And so just trying to come up with a solution, we were like, oh, we're just gonna tackle the whole of the policy when it comes to federal acquisitions, but again, that's just as big of a loophole, or just as big of a bag of cats, I guess, as the technology aspect. So I think one interview that really pointed us in the right direction was the interview with Dr. Burke after one of our PBLs.
Oh, that was huge. That was big.
I think he kind of sat us down, because we were like, policy, we're gonna fix the policy, you know what I mean? And we were sitting there primarily satisfied with the solution we put on the board, knowing that it's not complete or how we're gonna tackle that, because we have to go through Congress or whatever we're thinking of doing. And Dr. Burke sat us down and was like, look, I liked y'all's presentation, it was good. Y'all roped up a lot of information to a very small period of time. I felt it was very effective, but what he told us, he was like, all right, look, you have to take this policy thing and you have to come up with a solution that's plug and play, or think of something new, because policy is too big. It's way too big. Trust me, because he said he's been dealing with it for however long he's been working within the Arctic Communications.
Several months.
So what he suggested was that we start looking at unconventional ways of doing things, and I think as we realized what our options were, I was sitting there, what was his last PBL, and for whatever reason, I remembered an instructor from the prep school that I had, was an 85-year-old guy, worked in the Vietnam era, into the Korean War, Vietnam, into Desert Storm, the Gulf War. And, you know, during the highlight of his career, he was an engineer working on the RC-135 Coverall, or rivet joint program. And I think the main point of what he was trying to tell us was the federal acquisitions process, even back then, in the 50s and 60s, was way too slow. And it wasn't getting what they needed, because back then the problem was Russia's nuclear capabilities coming over the poles or coming from anywhere else couldn't be detected, and if we were sitting there dilly-dallying with the federal acquisitions process, it wouldn't happen fast enough. And the program he was working with to usurp that was Big Safari, which was basically, hey, we need this as a program, let's get it next week, and completely skip over the federal acquisitions process. So as we move forward, I think we're gonna start pointing to solutions that look like Big Safari, even though we're gonna have to go through civilian assets, because they have the time, they've got the money, and they've got the product already. It's just it's on our end to vet those things and then continue on with a different approach that it might seem unconventional, but still would work properly.
Well, I think one of the ways that we're gonna try and do that is through increasing the awareness of the Arctic region, the importance of it in the upcoming future, through things like economic channels, meaning that's where Russia is gonna be using ways for transporting goods, same with China. And so it's gonna be important for the US to monitor who's going through there, what they're doing, how much activity is going on there, and then basically posturing. It doesn't necessarily have to be militarily, but the more importance that we can place on the upcoming area, the upcoming theater of, it may not be war, but upcoming theater of, I guess, just
Conflict.
use,
Trade.
of pretty much a lot of stuff, just with
Yeah.
receding ice caps and just the inability to get around continents other ways. The Arctic's gonna become a thoroughway for a lot of different things, and in order to make sure that maintains, either stays peaceful or is properly armed on the US side, like, we need to really rapidly improve the acquisitions process, and that's the way we're gonna try and do it. We just need to bring this theater into light first, because right now it's being overshadowed by Afghanistan, Iraq, and the rest of the Middle East.
I think that's where we stand now as a you know, minimum viable solution that we can provide. So, I mean, otherwise, I think at this point it's just time to move on and kind of refine. Again, bring that awareness to light, like Gabe said, and then develop a program and look into what it takes to develop a program within the military that'll achieve those goals. But other than that, I think it's just time to move forward, and then hopefully if we can present a viable, effective, and efficient solution that'll work for what's needed in this dynamic environment. But other than that, I think that's unless y'all got other points.
No, that's all we got.
It's team innovation with Arctic Communications. So, as some of our problem sponsors like to say, NORTHCOM out.